Great, happy to be here. Congratulations for being here at this hour. I'm going to talk about not the how to make milk, but why you make milk, and the value proposition. I'm director of the Foods for Health Institute at the University of California, Davis. Our mission is to understand the role of diet and health and create value for agriculture, understanding health well enough that we can transfer that into agricultural traits, literally. Disclosures, we get sources of funding from all over. I have conflicts of interest for that, you need to know that, and we've launched companies from the Institute, so that conflict is something I need to alert you to. But also, my wife is a lactation consultant. When I get out of line, Shirley tells me where I should go. My oldest daughter is a pediatrician and neonatologist. When I talk about babies, I get in trouble. And my youngest daughter is in the theater, and every time I show her a picture, I have to pay her. So I'm the most conflicted man in the room. All right, so we should be enjoying the greatest health in the history of humans. And in some respects, we are. Jering and Roger are playing the sports that they learned as children. They're both over 100. So some humans are enjoying spectacular health throughout very long lives, but the majority of people are not. And the quality of their life is compromised largely by their diet. So we're doing a terrible job with diet and health, and there's a reason. For 70 years, the National Institutes of Health and the various research funding organizations mandated to fund research on health, disease prevention. No. They've been studying one thing: the diseases of middle-aged rich men. Sorry, but that's it. And we can spend hours on the statistics. It's very clear. One of the reasons why we know so little about diet and health, especially about preventing diseases, has not been the job of research. It's been this. Everything we think we know about health has been viewed through that lens. And it's been catastrophic, ironically, especially for your industry. So I want to talk to you about the value proposition. How are you doing today? And the answer actually is vivid when you go through the Sacramento airport. So you go through security. What does security do? They take away your beverage. You go through security, and oh, what a surprise, there's a kiosk to sell you back single-serve beverages. Sacramento Airport, milk and water are side by side. What's cheaper? Milk. What that means is, to the California flyer, California farmers are lowering the value of water by putting it through their cows. This is not a good value proposition. So let's look at that in some context. Is it toxic? So what are you going to do when you get on an airplane? You're going to be strapped into a chair, literally. So you will spend hours chained to a chair. And during that time, you'll begin the process of deterioration. Your bones will begin the process of turning over, literally dissolving. So your muscles will begin to atrophy. Your immune system will begin to senesce, and your physiological performance, blood flow, etc., will begin to decline. All of that will start microscopically. They would begin because you're chained to a chair. There's only one thing that's been shown to improve bone turnover, muscle retention, immune performance, and physiological regulation: milk. Cheaper than water. For those of you early in the morning, cheaper than water will be a surrogate for WTF. All right, so historically, is it toxic? Well, it turns out that this remarkable idea of domesticating ruminants and using their milk as an agricultural product, a dietary choice, that idea came in 4 different places in the world. 2 places in North Africa, 1 in West India and Northern Europe. And each of those places today, the population basically consists of mutants. They're X-Men. Unfortunately, their superpower is they can digest lactose their entire life. So not particularly attractive as a superpower. Nonetheless, Northern Europe illustrates this principle. This is the, in essence, map of the genetics of humans. And as you move into Northern Europe, a mutation dominates the genetics of those people. And the mutation is the ability to digest lactose your entire life. There's a mutation in, and these people, so lactose tolerance is a very rare mutation. The wild type of mammals, at weaning, mammals lose the ability to digest lactose, and from that point on, they're all lactose intolerant. Lactose intolerant is the wild type. But what does that really mean? What that means is, in these human populations, if you were not a mutant, if you did not have the ability to digest lactose your entire life, you're no longer in the gene pool. You have no descendants. Milk literally saved the human population in these areas. Cheaper than water. So the last question, of course, is this issue of the diseases of middle-aged rich men. Does milk cause heart disease? Well, we haven't looked at heart disease throughout the last 70 years. We've looked at markers of heart disease. And milk affects some markers. But in fact, Peter Elwood was fundamentally dissatisfied with the marker model. He's an epidemiologist, and he studies, in essence, the role of various diets and drugs and environments on human outcomes. He's a bodies in bags epidemiologist. If you're not dead, he's not interested in you. When you're dead, he can start studying what killed you. And so, as one of the things he looked at, ironically, to document that, in fact, consuming dairy products promoted heart disease, he studied the UK population for the past, in essence, 80 years, and asked a simple question: do you eat dairy products or not? And if you, in essence, ate dairy products, you were in one cohort. If you didn't eat dairy products, you were another. And then asked the question, did this cause heart disease? The risk of dying of heart disease is his outcome measure. So, if UK individuals consumed dairy products, were they more likely to die of heart disease? Of course, he assumed yes. It was only how much? So a relative risk of 1 meant that there was no effect of dairy. A relative risk of 2 meant it doubled the risk of heart disease. A relative risk of 3 meant it tripled the risk of heart disease. What did he find? 0.78. It lowers the risk of heart disease. People who consume dairy products their entire lives are less likely in the UK to die of heart disease. This was a surprise to him, so we went on more. He looked at stroke. He looked at diabetes. He looked at colorectal cancer, bladder cancer, everything he looked at. The people who consumed dairy products were, in essence, less likely to suffer from those diseases. Now, it turns out he did find one disease that was slightly related, elevated, in response to consuming dairy products. Now, you can interpret it one of 2 ways. One is there's poetic justice. That if, in fact, middle-aged rich men have been warping our view of health, then there is a disease that if there was poetic justice, dairy products would increase it. Prostate cancer. Right? But it turns out there is another interpretation. Bad news for you, some of you in the audience. If men live long enough, they're going to get prostate cancer. So the truth is, this reflects the fact that they were living longer. And yes, if you live longer, eventually you're going to get prostate cancer. So, again, cheaper than water. So in fact, epidemiologically, individuals who drink milk throughout their lives are taller, leaner, stronger, break fewer bones at all ages, and live longer. Cheaper than water. So, the Foods for Health Institute, we ask, what should we eat and what should we grow? That's our fundamental principle. And so we had decided to abandon the model of federal funding and take a different approach to diet and health. And we decided to use evolution itself. we were in the era of genomics. We, in essence, had access to the genomes of the entire phylogenetic tree, from viruses, bacteria, yeast, mold, insects, plants, animals, and humans, and we could ask a very simple question. What evolved to be nourishing? And when you do that, what you realize is it's a war out there. The strongest selective pressure throughout evolution has been to avoid being eaten. Avoiding being food has been job one. If you're delicious and nutritious throughout history, you were no longer in the gene pool. So plants especially have evolved remarkable strategies to make themselves objectionable, toxic, anti-nutritious to avoid being eaten. And the genius of humans is that we found ways in this hostile environment to basically live to reproduction. But there is something that evolved, in essence, literally to be a complete and comprehensive diet. I just want to emphasize, evolution is a tough taskmaster. Remember, every trait that persists in offspring at the, in essence, advantage of those that don't have it, meant that in order for that trait to persist, those that didn't have it died. Evolution is the history of, in essence, babies dying. So it is a tough model. So interestingly, the Darwin Awards are given every year for people who willfully take themselves out of the gene pool. Interestingly, turns out that the Darwin Awards have been given over the years now, and there's a statistical trend emerging. Over 95% of Darwin Award winners have been men. So we can do a better job, please, come on. So what if literally emerged in evolution to be food? Lactation. What a remarkable idea. The mother-infant pair. The mother literally dissolves herself to make a complete and comprehensive diet for her infant. Everything costs the mother. If it doesn't profit the infant, that component in milk, we'd be under negative selective pressure. But if anything in the milk provides a selective advantage for that infant, it's hard to imagine anything being under stronger positive selective pressure as a food component. So our goal is to understand exactly how that works. How does milk provide the benefits that it does? We realized this was a big job. So we started an international consortium of scientists around the world to begin the process of sequencing and annotating mammalian genomes from marsupials, pre-mammals to humans, and annotating their genomes for lactation. Big job. Danielle LeMay, computational biologist, brilliant. She organized this entire group of people, and now we have it. In essence, we have the annotated genomes of dozens of different mammalian species. If you take one thing away from this talk, become a subscriber to Splash. Every month, that organization publishes a summary of the hottest areas in milk research around the world. So you get, every month, porcelain reading for free. So it's our Rosetta Stone. If we can understand the language of milk, we can understand how people should eat, not only just as babies, but throughout their lives. Milk holds that secret. So I want to give you a couple of proofs of principles of what we found that illustrate where the future of food and milk could be going. So how does milk view bacteria? The traditional view is that milk is full of antimicrobial factors and they kill bacteria. Is that true? Well, remember, the mother's dissolving herself to make milk. The cost is massive, and so if it isn't valuable to the infant, it's of no value to, in essence, lactation. So imagine our surprise. We're taking human milk apart, and we find the third most abundant solid component is undigestible by babies. Why would mothers dissolve themselves to make poop? It made no sense. So first thing, okay, what is it? So we enlisted the help of the world's, in essence, most successful, brilliant analytical chemist in polymers, Carlito Labriglia. He basically took these molecules apart. They're polymers of sugars, oligosaccharides. different sugars and very stereospecific linkages. And there's not one of them, there's dozens of them. So milk is full of a variety of these complex sugar polymers. Babies can't digest them. So what do they do? Why would mothers do this? So I had an idea that they must feed bacteria. They're not feeding a baby, they feed bacteria, enlisted the help of David Mills, again, world-famous microbiologist. He studies bacterial populations in everything from wine vats to the intestine of humans. Isolated the oligosaccharides, gave them to David. Do bacteria grow on them? No. He tried bacterium after bacterium after bacterium. These complex oligosaccharides, these bacteria had no enzymes to break them down and release the sugars. So they don't feed bacteria. But then we found one. Oh, what a surprise, from the intestine of a breastfed baby. And when we sequenced this entire bacteria's genome, lo and behold, we found genes encoding enzymes to break down every single one of those glycosidic linkages. That means that they can acquire those sugars and live on them. What a remarkable idea of evolution. Mothers are literally recruiting another life form to babysit their baby. And they're making sure that this is the bacteria that flourishes because that's the one that they feed. So now we know that evolution hasn't been simply driving mothers and babies, it's been driving the interaction between mothers and babies and the bacteria in the babies. So who would need this? What customer? Well, first, breastfeed, breastfeed, breastfeed. I don't have to tell this room, but it's vital to do that. It's an important component of milk. But who really needs it? So Mark Underwood, head of neonatology, imagine his life. He takes premature babies, typically born by cesarean section, which means they're sterile. It's a sterile birth. He puts them in an incubator, and then they begin to acquire bacteria on and in them that will live with them the rest of their lives. And where are these bacteria coming from? The hospital. This is not the way you'd like to start life. So we ask a simple question: if you give these babies the right bacteria, does it in essence change them? And they become exactly like a full-term normal baby. We did a clinical trial. This is what typically the bacterial population of babies who don't get the bacteria, even when they're breastfed. They're full of all sorts of unpleasant bacteria, enterobacteria, gram-negative endotoxin-producing bacteria. These are not a good population of bacteria. You can put any probiotic in these babies and nothing happens. Probiotics do not rebalance your microbiome. The commercial I watched this morning on the TVs rebalances your intestine's microbiome. No, they don't. If you eat a few milligrams of probiotic bacteria, for a day or two you poop milligrams of probiotic bacteria. They don't change your microbiome. However, this bacteria that in essence co-evolved with human milk, when you give this bacteria to babies who don't have it, within 24 hours, it's multiplied. By 48 hours, 90% of the biomass of the diaper is a single strain of bacteria. It's astonishing. We gave it to these babies for 3 weeks, and then we stopped. Did the bacteria go away? No. As long as the mothers kept breastfeeding, kept providing this oligosaccharide substrate for the babies, the bacteria stayed high, and all of the inappropriate bacteria stayed out. So we saw it restored the gut microbiome of a breastfed baby to its traditional composition. It reduced the populations of enterobacteria, Clostridia bacteria, all sorts of bacteria, and it lowered the inflammation in the babies. It lowered the antibiotic-resistant genes in the babies. It was clearly a beneficial idea, not ours. We didn't invent this. We just discovered, oh, this is how actually milk works. Now we're finding out that these bacteria do all sorts of things for the baby. They lower pathogens. They prevent babies from being infected from a wide variety of organisms. They lower inflammation. They educate the immune system. They fuel the baby. They provide all sorts of, in essence, signaling systems. It's a remarkable process. I'll give you one example. This is a poopogram. Breastfed baby, 2 of them. One doesn't have the right bacteria, and so those oligosaccharides that are present in the milk are not being digested, and they're coming out the baby. As a result, breastfed babies that don't have the right bacteria have 4 to 10 diapers a day. However, as soon as they get the right bacteria, all the oligosaccharides get digested, and typically breastfed babies with the right bacteria have 1 diaper a day. You don't need complicated diagnostics, you just need a diaper pail. But there are other things about it that are interesting as well. The pH drops. The metabolism of these bacteria is such that they produce acetate and lactate, lowering the pH. pH of the babies that don't have the right bacteria is pH 6 to 6.5. All pathogens can grow at that. pH of a baby that has the right bacteria and is breastfed, pH 4.5. No pathogens grow at pH 4.5. This is a shelf-stable baby. What a remarkable idea from evolution. So how does this basically work? So mammals have embraced bacterial transfer. This is one of the geniuses of live birth. Is because of live birth, mothers transfer the bacteria to their baby. You all know this. You see this all the time. It's unique from reptilia, etc. It's a remarkable advantage of being a mammal and enjoying live birth. Unfortunately, modern medicine has inadvertently stopped it. And we're beginning to see the consequences. So not having these bacteria are causing problems. And while the bacteria has been disappearing around the world, we've seen dramatic increases in all autoimmune diseases, allergy, asthma, eczema, atopy, metabolic diseases, obesity and type 2 diabetes, neurological diseases, anxiety and depression. That early environment of a baby, what Jack has already talked to you about, epigenetics, that's educating babies. They're either educated in the presence of all sorts of unpleasant bacteria or a very, in essence, beneficial babysitter. So there are consequences. So we established a company to put this back into babies, both premature and otherwise, and again, disclosure, the company is demonstrating that this in fact can be done. Give it back to babies and away they go. But what have we learned? Clearly, we're not alone. We harbor a remarkable, in essence, community of bacteria within us, and that bacterial population is very important. Don't ask me, ask evolution. There's more oligosaccharides in breast milk of humans than protein. That means it's as important to feed the bacteria in the baby as the baby. So clearly, the microbial community is something we have not been paying attention to. It's vitally important, and we have not been paying attention. How we're going to put it back? It's not just us, it's animals. John Madigan at UC Davis, veterinarian of thoroughbred racing horses, a couple of years ago, one of the foaling barns, they came down with diarrhea, one after another. Every single foal had diarrhea. Turned out to be an antibiotic-resistant Clostridium difficile infection. Gave the bacteria, and actually everything went away, and the problem was solved. So launched another product. Maintaining the microbiological community as calves is going to be one of your next priorities. Okay, but it's not just babies. We'd like to be able to, in essence, improve the microbial community of all of us. We, in essence, have bacteria. What milk has taught us is you have to feed them right. You have to feed selective carbohydrates so only the good ones flourish. In essence, bovine milk have them. Daniela Barilla at the university, professor of chemistry, has been studying this. Cow's milk has lots of oligosaccharides and colostrum. But as soon as colostrum's over, the oligosaccharides dramatically decrease. What that means is, and Juan Medrano has mapped the genome of oligosaccharide production in cows, they can make all the oligosaccharides, and they do. But after a week, they start shutting it all down. A wonderful opportunity for genetics of Holsteins. Keep that oligosaccharide production high. Nonetheless, you can isolate them from waste streams and use them as an industrial product, but it's a big opportunity for value. Basically, what that is going to mean is we are all going to be enjoying the benefits of having the right bacteria. We will be, in essence, independent of where we are in life. We will be able to get the right bacteria, the right foods for that bacteria, and have the sorts of benefits that we've seen. It sounds a little bit unpleasant from a food perspective, however. That means we're going to be eating bacteria and food for bacteria. Doesn't sound pleasant. Actually, it is. It's going to be, in essence, The history of food. Look at the valuable foods throughout history: chocolate, coffee, bread, cheese, wine, yogurt, beer. They're not commodities. They're a combination of commodity plus microorganisms. And those microorganism commodity combinations make the food more stable, more safe, more nourishing, and more delicious. So our future is actually going to be more delicious. We weren't done. We've been looking at milk all over. Protein. So, premature babies. Can they even digest milk? I was convinced they couldn't. Milk is, in essence, protein. Can they even digest it? So, we took milk back out of babies with the help, again, of Mark Underwood. And simple question: can babies digest protein from milk? Beautifully. Pink is the peptides going into a baby, and blue is what's coming back out. So the babies are digesting these proteins beautifully. But I was unconvinced. How do they do it? So we began an exhaustive process. We took every peptide, ran it through tandem mass spectrometer, which means we can sequence the peptides. That was a massive undertaking. Graduate students, one by one, had to annotate these spectra, but now we have an entire map of all the peptides in milk. What can we do with that? We can map that to the proteins. And then say, these peptides came from these proteins. And then ask the simple questions: what enzymes release them? So Nora Caldy said there are 5 enzymes computationally that are releasing the peptides in milk. Interesting, babies don't have these enzymes. Where are they coming from? The milk. Juan Medrano showed all those enzymes are being produced in the mammary gland. They're inert in milk, and they get activated in the baby. What a remarkable idea. So milk isn't self-digesting. So what did we learn? Digestion isn't easy. Don't ask young people, ask the elderly. Gluten intolerance isn't celiac disease. Gluten intolerance is it's difficult to digest gluten. And the older you get, the less likely you are to digest it. It's not going to be gluten. It's going to be all plant proteins. If you can't digest them, you can't, in essence, live on them. And it's going to be a real problem. Milk solved it for us. Just identify the enzymes and provide them in diet. So what we've learned is that the future of dairy is basically innovating at every level, from literally, as we say, from farm to fork. And the sorts of benefits that milk is illustrating as possible targets for diet aren't just, in fact, although there are, the diseases of middle-aged rich men. It's throughout your life. There are benefits to milk. So what's milk going to be? Cheaper than water? Or the cornerstone of a future of personalized health? I would argue that's your future. But what are you going to have to do? Own lactation. You've already lost the milk brand, I'm sorry. You didn't defend it, and so now I can grind up anything. If it's a white beverage, I can call it milk. That's a disaster, but it happened. So own lactation. There is no support for human milk anywhere in the world, especially in the United States. Support human milk, breastfeeding. Be visible doing that. And the more you learn about human milk, the more you learn about all milks, especially Holstein milk. Health needs to be measurable. Drive the abilities to know what your health really is. If you're using celebrities like Dr. Oz to tell you what's good for you, you've already lost. Make health measurable, and dairy will be, in essence, visibly, the thing that's working on it. And then finally, prepare for disruption. We've been talking about data for 2 days. Make all the compositional features of milk available. If you're running a restaurant today and you're not on Yelp, no millennial is coming. You have to be part of the data stream. Make milk the most available data set, and in essence, millennials will start consuming it. Thanks.